So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, where we're going to have a look at the sort of information that underwriters look for when completing the professional indemnity insurance renewal forms for conveyancing firms and practitioners. My name is Faye Stenning, and I'm a marketing manager here at InfoTrack. I'm delighted to be joined by Jenny Screech, who's the legal professions consultant for professional indemnity at Howden Insurance Brokers, and Lisa Summerton, who's the head of strategic partnerships here at InfoTrack, and they're both going to be taking you through today's session. So before we begin the webinar, I would like to draw your attention please to the Q&A tab, which is located at the bottom of your screen. We will have a Q&A session at the end of this webinar, so please type in any questions that you might have for Jenny and Lisa, along with your name, into the Q&A box. That way, if we run out of time or if your question requires further clarification, we can extract your information and follow up with you directly after the webinar. So all that's left to do now is for me to hand you over to Jenny and we can get started. Thank you very much, Jenny.
Thank you very much, Faye, and good afternoon, everybody. I do hope that you're all sitting somewhere cool and comfortable this afternoon. We're going to be talking about solicitors' PI and turning the spotlight on conveyancing. And particularly, we want to talk about what you can do in terms of the completion of your proposal forms to assist your position when you are going through your PI renewal. Now, as you know, the 1st of October renewal is just around the corner, and it's still the most significant date for the renewal of solicitors' PI policies. On the Howden book, which is large enough to be representative of the profession, we have 46% of RSRA regulated firms that renew on the 1st of October. We are still in a hard market, and obviously we have just been through the 1st April renewal. And for anybody who is interested in reading some more detail about that, last week we just published our biannual market report, which talks in some detail about the 1 April renewal and what to expect for 1 October. So there's a link to that report for anybody who is interested in the questions slide in this presentation. But basically, we are still in a hard market. As you all know, it was the Lloyd's review in 2018 that catapulted us into the hard market that really took effect for solicitors in the April 2019 renewal. But what we can say is that there is a glimmer of light at the end of what has been a very long tunnel. We're still in the tunnel, but while we still saw rate increases in April, we are observing a flattening of the curve. So increases that haven't been as significant as what we've been seeing over the last 3 years. But it's always really important to pick up the phone and talk to your broker. You should never rely on averages of what's happening in the market. It's most important to talk about what's happening for your firm and with your particular insurer as well, because it does differ. For conveyancing, and those firms that undertake conveyancing, there's another issue at play here as well. And most firms for their last completed financial year will have an increase in gross fees, largely because that will include at least some period of the SDLT holiday when conveyancing transactions were at an all-time high for a number of firms. Now, I'm sure that you're familiar with the fact that insurers rate on fees, so if there's been an increase in gross fees, then there will be an increase in PI premium. Certainly that's what you should be budgeting for. But we want to talk more broadly about that today, about the whole issue of conveyancing and PI premiums and why it is that underwriters are so concerned about conveyancing. The areas of particular concern that they have that are reflected in the questions on your proposal form and how you can make a difference. So I thought that we would start by looking at why underwriters are so concerned. So I'm sure that you've heard this before, that the legal profession does experience a very high level, high frequency of PI claims compared to other professions. And conveyancing generates more claims activity than any other area of practice. The historic and the current claims statistics all tell the same story, and all demonstrate why underwriters are so cautious and ask so many questions. Now, again, I'm sure that you've heard this year after year, and you could be forgiven for starting to feel a bit skeptical about it and perhaps wondering, is it really as bad as everybody says? So let's have a look at some figures. This chart here is data from the Solicitors Indemnity Fund. And this was put together by Charles River and Associates. And they were commissioned to do a report commissioned by the SRA in 2010. So, this history was put together 10 years after SIF had closed. So it's very well developed, so very reliable. And what you can see there is those huge spikes for conveyancing. And yes, that vertical axis is in millions of pounds. So over that period, which saw the fallout of claims from the recession in the early 90s, we see around 50% of the overall value paid out being related to conveyancing. The other thing that this graph neatly illustrates is the years, the long tail nature of solicitor claims that you'll have heard about, and that they do tend to continue to haunt insurers for a number of years. So moving on then to look at the open market position. Now this is from data that was collected from the open market insurers in 2015. And it was an exercise organised by the SRA. Insurers provided their data on an anonymised basis to a third party who aggregated it, gave it to the SRA, and we got a few graphs in return. We would have liked more information. But again, this graph does illustrate the very high proportion of property-related claims. And there's some real deficits in these numbers, even as high as they are. For example, data was only provided by 75% of the participating insurers. As you'll be aware, a number of insurers had left the market. And some of those due to insolvency. It's reasonable to expect that they would have had some of the worst claims experience data on their books. Likewise, this is just the money that was paid out. While insurers gave their reserve information, it wasn't included in the numbers. So these numbers, it's reasonable to say, are light compared to what ultimately would have been the end position, because certainly some of the years on this were also quite undeveloped. But again, it does illustrate the background to the concern. And here we have a more up-to-date picture. This is Howden data. This isn't money paid out. This is just notifications, percentage of notifications for the period from December 17 to 30 September 2021. And again, you can just see that residential conveyancing leads the way. The concern that insurers have is that if the property market falters, what we've historically always seen is an increase in claims activity, and they would expect these numbers to increase. So that's the backdrop. Hopefully that provides an explanation as to why underwriters are so focused in this area. But what are the particular issues of concern? What are they most worried about? And to answer that, the best thing we can do is look at the proposal form. Because as you'll be aware, the proposal form has a conveyancing section and there's plenty of questions there. If we went back to 2000 to the proposal forms then, you probably wouldn't even find a conveyancing section. But now, over the years, insurers have added questions, and the background to those questions is the claims experience that they've seen. So let's take a look at some of the issues. Now, first of all, I'm sure you will all have seen on your proposal form tables like the one that we've produced there, which is from the Howden proposal form. There's a lot of data that insurers want to look at, which does sometimes present a collection exercise for firms. They're wanting to look at the volume of work that's been undertaken. So they'll look at for example, residential conveyancing, the number of the gross fees. Then they'll look at the number of transactions, and they'll do a quick calculation to sort of see what the average fee you're charging per transaction is. And they'll be taking a view of whether the price you're charging, whether they think you can do the work for that sort of cost within the time frame that would allow. They'll then take a look at the next part of the chart, where you'll see they're looking for an indication of remortgage work, because if you've got a high proportion of that, then they'd expect that there'd be a different sort of ratio between gross fees and number of transactions. Some proposal forms will also want to know how your conveyancing department is resourced, number of principals, solicitors, other fee earners, support staff. Again, they're interpreting this data just to take an overall view of your conveyancing practice. So if when you put these numbers together, you think there's something there that insurers might have a bit of a query about that, then it's always wise to address the issue and explain it in a covering letter. Highest property value, they do want to know if you're doing residential conveyancing up to 5 million, because that could potentially inform them about the possible quantum of claims that could come through. Buy-to-let transactions, that really became key off the back of the 2007-2008 recession, when we had a very overheated buy-to-let market, and insurers paid out millions of pounds in terms of lender claims arising as a result of mortgage fraud through the period preceding that. Increases due to SDLT holiday. It's important to mention that you may not find a question on your proposal form, but underwriters are acutely aware that fee earners during the SDLT holiday were working under pressure. There were huge volumes of work. They are concerned about the potential for claims to arise out of that work. So if your transaction numbers and fees did go up significantly, then it will be important for you to reassure underwriters about any additional controls that you had in place. And we know from talking to our firms that many firms were acutely aware of the risk, put additional resourcing in place, perhaps additional audits, different processes. So if your firm did that, then it would be wise to draw that to the attention of your underwriter. Compliance with AML requirements. Underwriters do read the legal press, and they've seen a lot in recent months about the SRA's concerns about compliance with the new AML regime. So there are questions around that. You need to reassure your underwriter about it. Imposter vendors. That has been a significant issue. You'll all be familiar with the dream bar scenario that we saw. Underwriters are asking questions about the client verification process. We are still seeing these claims from time to time. I mean, I know that firms are very aware, try very hard to address this issue, but fraudsters are becoming ever more sophisticated. One of the difficulties is that when we see an imposter vendor claim, it's usually a significant number. Dream bar, for example, was around the £1 million mark. The fraudsters really don't get out of bed these days for anything under £1 million, and underwriters have experienced these claims. That's what's driving these questions, and they want to be reassured that you are addressing this issue with processes and training of your staff as well. Likewise, compliance with lender requirements is key. If a lender suffers a loss, they will pick through the file to see whether you've complied, and if you haven't, then the potential claim may well follow. Underwriters have seen this over the years, so they want to know again how you address this issue. And mortgage fraud. Again, as I said, post 2007, 2008, this was a huge issue for insurers. And the example question I've noted there is actually about the training that you deliver. And that became quite important post 2007, 2008, because what we saw were situations where firms had routinely not advised lenders about back-to-back transactions or discounting, cashbacks, etc. And when asked, well, the Law Society green card that came out in the 90s, why weren't you complying with that? And we did have responses. This was when I was with Zurich Insurance at the time as an underwriter, and we did get some responses saying, green card, what's that? And what became clear is, in some instances, it was a blind eye, but in some instances, there hadn't been training undertaken in relation to the due diligence that was required in this particular area. So, that's why you get questions asked around training, and it's, really important that you're able to respond to those questions and reassure underwriters that your teams are being properly trained. Investment schemes, property clubs, buyer-funded developments. Buyer-funded developments in particular, the last 3 or 4 years, this issue has absolutely been huge. Underwriters have paid out millions of pounds on this issue already. Those instances where purchasers are paying 50, 60, 70, 80% of the purchase price up front, and 2 years later, the development's still a hole in the ground. There are a significant number of claims here. To the extent that your firm has engaged in these transactions, really important that you're able to detail to insurers the additional risk management measures that you had in place. From an underwriting perspective, if you have engaged in this transaction, what would be really helpful is to know if, in fact, the development is complete, the clients have title and all is well, because obviously the problems in terms of claims have come in relation to those developments that either aren't started or are incomplete, and the money has gone or run out. Acting on multiple transactions in a single development, again, you will have seen quite detailed questions about this in your proposal form. And the concern there is if you're acting for, say, 20 different purchasers who are each purchasing a flat in a new development, and you make a mistake and that causes loss, then there's the potential for that to be replicated 20 times, which potentially means quite a significant payment from an indemnity perspective. So again, to the extent that you've engaged in that activity, you need to satisfy insurers about the risk management approach that you've undertaken. Preferred solicitor for new build developments. This question again came off the back of issues post 2007, 2008. The concern here is the potential for firms to be reliant on a lot of work coming from one source and perhaps not be as robust as they should be in terms of the way they are then handling the transactions for the purchasers that have been referred to them. So if you are a preferred solicitor, again, important to demonstrate to insurers that you do provide a great deal of rigour to those transactions. You are robust in your approach. Overseas property work. I'm sure that some of you will have heard about the AIG and Woodman decision a few years ago. That was a failed property development, one in Morocco and the other in Turkey. a number of investors bringing a claim that had a headline figure of £10 million. Insurers do get concerned about overseas property work, the expertise to deal with that work. Even if, for example, you're just dealing with a one-off transaction, say in France, the issue is the expertise to be involved in that matter. And when a claim arises in that situation, it is more difficult for insurers to defend because they have to source offshore expertise for expert evidence or advice and guidance to deal with the claim. So again, if you're engaged in overseas property work, insurers will be wanting to know more about how you handle that. MDR, that's something that has emerged in the last 3 or 4 years. You'll have seen that question creep in. Insurers want to, they've seen claims in this area. They want to know what procedures you have in place to identify MDR issues and what training you've been providing to staff on that. Onerous ground rent clauses, that hasn't turned out to be quite the catastrophe that was predicted back in 2017 when it started to emerge. But insurers are also concerned about other onerous lease clauses as well. The SRA produced some guidance in relation to onerous ground rent clauses and other lease clauses back in January this year. So do make sure that all your teams have reviewed that, and again, really useful if you can tell your insurer that you've done some training recently in this area. Help to Buy and shared ownership. They've also seen claims come in from this kind of work. Again, just simply the situation where a purchaser, perhaps due to a downturn in the market, and they're unable to refinance, or there's a loss on sale. People will get the file and pick through to see whether appropriate advice was given. So another area of work where vigilance is required. Equity release work, you'll have seen the questions there, wanting to know if you give legal and or financial advice. Insurers are conscious of the fact that there's a great deal more equity release activity at the moment. There's a steady increase in the transactions, and they're concerned about a potential fallout in this area. You are often dealing with vulnerable clients, so it's important that there are very robust processes around this work. So having looked at those specific points, just want to turn now to look at how you can make a difference. What can you do to persuade the insurers that, notwithstanding all of these issues, you're on top of the risk issues and you are a good risk to have on their books. First of all, engage with your broker to understand the particular sensitivities for your insurer. For example, some of them might be more focused on the buyer-funded development issue, whereas others perhaps more focused on multiple transactions in a single development, or mortgage fraud training. So engage with your broker to find what the hot topics are at the moment, because they do change from renewal to renewal as well. Also, make sure that you've got processes and systems in place for collating the information that's requested on the proposal form. They don't change much from year to year. Generally, you find it's questions being added rather than questions being removed, and there's a certain amount of core information and data there that's repeated year on year. Also, engage with your conveyancing principals and team to provide the best possible answers, because some of the questions require a narrative answer. And I know that often it's the practice manager or finance director that takes responsibility for the completion of the forms, but you really need to engage with those involved in that particular area to ensure that you get the best possible answer. Treat the proposal form questions seriously. Even if a question looks odd or ridiculous to you, it doesn't to your underwriter, and they've got a reason why they want it to be there. And certainly, I have to say, as an underwriter, I have seen a response on a proposal form which says, this is a stupid question, which to see that answer really won't impress an underwriter. They have a reason for putting the questions there. So, do take them seriously. I'd also say at this point too, you may find or feel that there's duplication of questions. And by all means, talk to your broker, about that if you think that two questions are asking the same thing. Sometimes that arises because what a broker tries to do with their proposal form is satisfy as many insurers as possible so that you're not having to complete multiple forms. And sometimes there may be a particular question where a particular insurer to accept the form insists on an alternative version or a slightly different version of the question being asked with their particular wording on it. If you don't understand a question or can't supply the information requested, always talk to your broker. Sometimes it might be that you have to say, no, we don't do this, and it's a yes/no answer, but you actually do something else that will satisfy the underwriter. It's always important to ensure that you give them that narrative. Don't feel as though you're tied sort of slavishly to the yes and no answers. You can always asterisk that, reference it in a covering letter, and explain how you address particular issues. Focus on risk management. I really can't stress that enough. You've just got to be continually reviewing your processes, your systems, your initiatives, anything that you can do to reduce risk. Really keep on top of the training, the imposter vendor issue, the mortgage fraud issues. It's really important that you keep addressing that with your teams, and also really engage your teams in the whole risk management issue. Quite often it's the people at the coalface doing the work who are the best at identifying where the potential gaps might be or what could be done better or differently to reduce risk. And then provide a supplementary letter, document, or third-party report that will provide additional information to demonstrate that your firm is a good risk. They don't want your whole risk management manual. They haven't got time to review that, but supplementary information that's well presented, well ordered, bullet points, headings, etc., that just gives some additional detail to showcase your firm and demonstrate your approach to risk. So that's it from me. There's the link there to the market report that you'll be able to look at when the slides come round. But before we have questions, I'm going to pass over to Lisa Summerton. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you very much. Super. I will just share my screen, hopefully. Bear with me 2 minutes. Okay. So, oh, it's gone to a different piece. Apologies for that. So, InfoTrack and Howden's, we have here, we've heard that professional indemnity insurers look for and why they ask the questions they do. And now I'd like to explain how InfoTrack and the use of our software helps law firms to minimise the risk of and incidence of claims effectively, and also enables completion of the PII renewal forms to be undertaken with more accuracy. So with the management tool offering firm-wide supervision over key areas, it is far easier for law firms working with InfoTrack to supervise and assess a risk on an ongoing basis and reduce the potential for incidence of claims. InfoTrack law firms have the benefit of the many integrations that you can see on this page that we've put in place, like the land registry, the search data providers, lender platforms, HMRC, CMS providers, etc. CMS providers, which we have, a huge majority now integrated with us. By doing this, we are ensuring that the data flows throughout the matter on InfoTrack, but also back to the CMS platform through the integrated CMS partner. With our AP1 dashboard as well, allowing full firm-wide visibility of all AP1s lodged at the land registry, requisitions coming in, cancellation notices, etc., law firms should never miss a critical date due to a team member being on holiday. We have obviously the onboarding, we have search hazard alerts, we have reporting to the clients, we have reporting to the lender, and we have a post-completion element, all of which are areas that the PI insurer is interested in hearing more about. Lender requirements should be easier to manage through the calendar alert system, but also due to the integration with LMS, meaning the OS1 priority searches and completed AP1s are now automatically lodged onto the lender platform, fulfilling the lender requirement without needing to manually hop onto a separate website to update and fulfill their requirements. Again, reporting to clients with our data-driven property report, which takes data from source, from searches, land registry, mortgages, allowing you to report on leases effectively. You can confidently report on all relevant aspects of your client's purchase without having to cut and paste or copy type, which can lead to errors and omissions. It gives you a nice flowchart to work through. These are just a few areas where risk is minimized, but in reality, risk is being managed and reduced right from onboarding, with the identity being checked through our safe harbor software, funds verified through our open banking app, our client questionnaires highlighting whether any SDLT discounts would be applicable, all the way through to the final submission of the AP1 to the land registry when working with the InfoTrack portal. But when it comes to completing your renewal forms, does your insurer actually know about these processes, or is it just a tick box exercise? So with InfoTrack, we have made changes to our MI area, which now, when you pop into this area on the platform, you will see data which will help you to manage risk and complete your forms with more accuracy. A frequently asked question on the PII renewal form is to provide a geographical split of your conveyancing transactions. We have a heat map on our MI workspace, which shows you the locality of the transactions your firm has worked on, helping you to complete this section of the PI renewal form. Beneath that, you will see that there is the firm usage. You'll see a graph which shows your firm's usage of the various products and touch points of the InfoTrack portal. So you can see how many VOI plus searches your firm has undertaken in a month, the number of lender handbook searches. And within that, that will help you to identify whether you've actually worked on any shared equity properties, etc., because there could be a particular lender that only deals in that area. AML searches, so you can see what international clients you've worked with. All of this really useful information. So there are two buttons on this page, one to export the PI support document report, and the second to download the supporting data report. So the PII support document itself is designed to be attached to your PI renewal form. And this highlights to the insurer the robust processes your firm undertakes through InfoTrack to ensure you are managing your risk and processes effectively. If you work with the ECOS onboarding as an example, it will explain how the software works, the processes it goes through to onboard a client, verify their identity and their source of funds. It will explain which regulations it complies with and how it uses biometric facial checks for the ID, offering a safe harbor solution, and goes through the TrueLayer open banking system to verify bank statements and unusual spend patterns or unidentified spend. The PII support document will bring a statement up in all the areas referred to previously, pre-completion, post-completion, onboarding, etc., if you use the InfoTrack platform for these services. If you don't, the area will remain blank for you to complete your own statement. Just as important as the support document, though, is the data report, which enables you to complete the renewal form with more accuracy and confidence. Research from several law firms suggested to me that they gather a lot of the data from their case management systems, but there is still a huge proportion where they have to go around to the individual divisions in the conveyancing department, asking whether they have dealt with X or dealt with Y. And then it's a bit of best guesswork. But by having the data available at your fingertips and on a regular basis, so this data isn't something that you just need to use before your PI renewal and completion of that, it's there on a regular basis. You can log into it weekly, monthly, however often you'd like to. But it just means that you can complete your forms without the level of best guesswork, which currently goes on today, but also allows you to manage your firm's risk on an ongoing basis, which is what insurers would like to see. If you see there have been a number of international AML searches, you may want to investigate to see A, whether you want to be acting for those clients, or B, that the lawyers acting on their behalf are actually managing the risk appropriately. It also allows you to be proactive as opposed to reactive, which is what insurers would urge all law firms to be doing. So really, I mean, I could talk about our PI renewal support form and the data and tell you exactly where on the platform it helps. So with all the products, the ECOS, the property report, the fact that it has integration with LMS to have the lender updates, etc. I could talk all day on this, but really, if you have any queries on this, please come back to us and we can point you into the direction of where it can help. But this MI page on our platform is there to help you, and is there to help you reduce your risk and also to help you to complete your forms with more accuracy. So we're really proud today to be presenting alongside Howden, who recognise that law firms working with the InfoTrack software are actively engaging in the management of risk, which is so very important from the perspective of PII insurers. They also acknowledge the benefits of the InfoTrack PII support document, which will demonstrate and explain to PI insurers the processes that firms are engaged in to manage risk and also ensure the availability of reliable data to populate PII forms. So please do contact a member of InfoTrack or head across to our website for more information if you would like to discuss PI renewals and Howdens in more detail. I'm going to move across now to Faye for a question and answer session.
Lovely, thanks ever so much, Lisa and Jenny, for a very informative webinar. Okay, so I can see that we've had some questions that have come through. So we'll go straight into the Q&A section. The first question is for Jenny, please. Our firm is very cautious, and each year we've notified a few matters that have never developed or been a problem. Will notifying those matters have increased our premium?
Okay, well, the first thing there is notification is really important. If you have a claim or a circumstance, it's absolutely key to notify. Underwriters expect to see notifications, and in fact, when you're notifying circumstances, which is, claims that actually, well, this might be a problem, we haven't got a claim yet. When you're notifying those and they go to close no pay, that actually demonstrates to insurers that risk management is alive and well in your firm, because you have got fee earners who are highlighting potential difficulties, and you're also reporting those on to insurers. So, those notifications of circumstances are not going to result in an automatic, or shouldn't result in an automatic increase in your premium at all. And in fact, they should be viewed in a positive way, that you are alert to those issues. If you have, obviously a matter that turns into a claim and that involves, significant payments, then, it's the claims activity and those payments that start to have an impact in relation to your premium. But notifying circumstances is always a good thing.
Perfect, thank you, Jenny. Somebody else has asked, when should we start completing our proposal for renewal on the 1st of October?
Okay, well, at Howden, we're in the process of sending our renewal invites out now. And what I would say is it always takes longer than you expect to complete those proposal forms and get the information together. My view is that it's around now that you should be picking up the phone to your broker and agreeing a timeline for you to have your completed proposal form submitted. That will then enable you to put in place the timetable and a timeline within your own firm, because you're going to be reliant on others to deliver information to you generally as well. Might be reliant on colleagues in different departments. So you need to set timelines for them. And that way you'll be able to work towards getting your form complete and into insurers in a timely way. Your broker, for example, will be able to tell you when they expect your current insurer to start quoting. That varies across the market. So the answer to that is you need to be getting underway now with the first task on your agenda, lifting the phone to your broker.
Great, thank you, Jenny. The next question someone asked is, who would supply a third-party report?
Well, InfoTrack provide this third-party report. So we have the PII support document, which is a third-party report, which is previously sort of mentioned. You can, if you're using parts of the InfoTrack software or all of the InfoTrack software, various statements will come up to explain how you comply with lender requirements, how you do your verification of identity and do the Trolero open banking system for the verification of funding, etc. How you report on your leases, so the escalating ground rents, etc., would all be part of the property report, and you would be evidencing that you deal with this element through the intuitive property report. Again, identifying multiple dwellings, etc. When working with the ECOS onboarding system and the client questionnaires that are within that, it is very easy for our law firms to identify SDLT reliefs and see where multiple dwellings might be applicable. So throughout the InfoTrack software, we've got various different products which will help you to minimize the risk, and a statement will come up for each of those and will compile into a report that can be attached to your renewal form.
Perfect, thank you, Lisa. And our last question is, do underwriters read all of the information that we give them?
Underwriters certainly read all those answers that you put on your proposal form. They are also interested to read supplementary material. What we do say, though, is don't overburden them on that front, because they are dealing with huge numbers of submissions. So always make that supplementary documentation really focused. As I said before, they haven't got time to read your entire risk management manual, but they are very interested in the answers to the questions on the proposal forms. So that's why it's very important for you to focus on the narrative answers that you're giving, particularly, and make sure that they are comprehensive and convincing.
Perfect. Jenny, if we have time, we have got another couple of questions that have come through. Are you happy for me to?
Sure.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. The first one is from someone that says, we had a claim in 2018 and settlement was achieved. However, our insurance shot up from 11,000 to 64,000. Do you think it might increase again this year?
Okay, well, yeah, rates are increasing. So I think that you have to face the potential that due to the overarching market increase in rate, there's some uplift that could be occurring there. And also if you've had an increase in gross fees, then your premium is likely to increase in line with the increase in gross fees. As far as the claim itself is concerned, I mean, if it's if it's now at an end, and insurers have indicated that an earlier uplift was due to that, then if you should be arguing very strongly that there shouldn't be any further uplift due to that claim itself. And it's always also really important to ensure that you have some dialogue, whether in a meeting or via your proposal form, with underwriters about claims activity. Always really important to ensure that if you disagree with the way it's been handled, certainly you can make that point. You really must say what you have done in response to the claim, any additional training that you've put in place across teams, or any processes that you've changed to make sure that the matter won't happen again. So yeah, where you have a claim, don't leave it in isolation. Always make sure that you address what happened, what went wrong, what you've done to make sure that won't happen again. And actually in our market report, there's an article on this very thing, and it's called The Elephant in the Room.
Perfect. Thank you, Jenny. Okay, this will be the last question because I'm conscious that we are running out of time, but we'll squeeze this one in as it's through. So last year, for the first time, we were required by our PII providers to have a separate cyber insurance policy from a third-party insurance provider. This year, those requirements are being tightened further. So how significant is cyber risk in the renewal decisions?
It is very important, and it has over the last couple of years become increasingly important. And yes, we have seen that situation where your PI insurer also wants you to have separate cyber policy. Separate cyber cover for law firms has become more difficult in the last 12 months. There have been a couple of insurers who have pulled out of the market simply because of the risk concerns there. If you have yet to renew your cyber policy this year, or you are thinking of putting a policy in place, or understand that you may need to do that to assist with your PI renewal, then you should be talking with your broker about that sooner rather than later. The cyber insurers are looking at, as a minimum, at things like VPN for remote access. They want to see that you're using MFA, segmented backup solutions, etc. So yes, it is an issue that they very much have on their radar. And again, in the market report, we actually talk about this. There's a separate article about cyber insurance cover, and we also refer to it as being an issue on underwriters' radar.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jenny. Okay, so I think we're coming to the end of the webinar now. So I would like to say a big thank you to Jenny and Lisa for their time today. And I hope everybody's found this session useful and informative. If you have any questions or any other questions, about anything that you've learned today, or questions in relation to the InfoTrack platform and solutions, you can either contact us using the details on your screen or reach out to your account manager, who will be more than happy to assist you. So as mentioned earlier, this session is going to be recorded, and we will send you a copy so that you can refer back to Jenny and Lisa's notes. So all that's left to say is thank you very much for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your lovely hot day. And thank you again for joining us. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.